All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this geeky panel with David and Jess and myself.
Hello,
Now,
hello.
I'm sure that everyone who's watching this know who you guys are, but please tell us anyway.
After you, Jess.
Do they know who I am? I don't know who I am.
I don't think. Yeah, exactly.
Who
I don't
am
know who
I
any
these
of us
days?
are.
No. I'm Board Game Girl Jess, host of Girl Stampede on the Heavy Cardboard channel.
And I am David Waybright with Man vs. Meeple. I was on here yesterday a few times, so hopefully you saw that. If you weren't familiar with me already, and if you aren't familiar, please go to Man vs. Meeple and check us out.
Yeah. In fact, people should check out content of both of you because you have some awesome stuff in general.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Even if they are familiar with you, they should still check it out because
Yes,
That's fair.
if you are a longtime subscriber, please continue to do so.
Exactly. Don't dismiss those who've been here, right? Yes.
Right. All right. Let me see. I just had a let's switch to
How
the other
geeky are we
camera.
gonna get here, by the way?
Well, first
Super
of all,
Super
we
geeky.
are we're going to get geeky enough where the chat will be able to keep up with us. So this is actually by the way, I think something happened with my because it switched
Yeah,
over
you
to the
are
other camera.
you're either
Very
standing
still.
very still.
I mean, he has some magic abilities. It might be. It's a magic trick right now. I wouldn't put it past Rainer.
I'll switch
he's
back to the other one.
capable of anything.
But yeah, this is definitely one where we encourage people to participate in the chat and so forth. This is not certainly. I think the three of us are capable of talking about geeky board game related topics, but we want involvement from people in the chat as well. In general, the point of this one is we had another geeky panel yesterday, which was more of a top 5 format where people were talking about iconic characters from movies and from comic books or TV or whatever it could have been. Today we're going to talk about specifically, so if you saw in the preview before we started, so this is titled component monikers. So basically the names of things and bits and stuff in games. Some of those names we love, others we find very frustrating, and I suspect, especially the two of you who play a lot of games, learn a lot of games.
Oh no.
Sometimes you run into something in a rule book where it's like, oh my goodness, why are they? I'm never going to remember that they call it this because I'm so used to this component having a different shape or looking a different way or something. Or for that matter, we might also stray into the territory of in general, when you expect something, sometimes you can open a game, right? And you can look at in it and you can say, well, I know what all these things are because I'm familiar with them. I know that this is a card or this is a die. And you know that your actions, what they are. I'm placing a worker. You know what all these things are called. And then they decide to make it to be clever and name it something else.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Is this just market research? Or are you trying to determine whether or not you at Board&Dice should start using silly and ridiculous names? Are we going to be like using Rainers in your next game or something like that?
I'd hope not. No, and I don't know. I mean, I think, I mean, even though I work in publishing, right? I am still a gamer, and I run into these things as well because I play a lot of games, and this is one of those things that sometimes. So let me start with one example. Sometimes I find it amusing. So a game. I don't know if you've played Sidereal Confluence. So this is a game where you have 7 basic resources. Plus you have ships, and then you have technologies, and you have all these things. And I find it amazing because I actually had to look it up and I had to write it down. So the resources are things like food or life support, culture, industry, information, biotechnology, power and electricity tech. And every time you play that game, you don't care one bit what those bits are called.
Mm-mm.
You're trading brown and green cubes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yellow cubes.
And that's what will generally happen, right? If there are names that you guys that you just can't sort of wrap your head around, or you don't want to, it just it boils down to the colors. One that comes to my mind in that pure example is, and I can't even remember the name of it, but from Underwater Cities, is it bioplast something or other? They call the steel
plast. Yeah,
Steel
plast and
plast.
biomatter. Yep.
Steel and biomatter. Is that the slightly
a
wild
poop.
one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, the colors of those things. Bio. I mean, and now with that said, I don't begrudge the company for doing that. I like the publisher sort of digging in and getting a little fun with the names of these things. At the same time, I don't want anyone looking at me and saying, it's bioplast or steel plast. As long as they're okay with me saying gray, I'm okay with them calling it steel plast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
exactly that. I mean, we do that, right? We sit around the table and it may be that it thematically has this name. And you may rib on somebody that you're playing with, like, no, that's the steel flash. What are you talking about? You can't have that. But, so it can be part of the game or part of the experience. But yeah, you're just going to, most of the time, say gray cubes, orange cubes.
Now,
Can you pass me?
I have a follow-up question for both of you. Can you think of a game where they did do that, and for whatever reason or another, you were able to completely and wholly embrace a name? I have an example, but I'm curious as to whether or not you guys have a game where you're like, yeah, I'm all in on steel plast or whatever the case may be. Anything? You want me to start with my example?
Even with Underwater Cities, the first time, the only one that I could remember was kelp.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I learned it's like, oh yeah, it's steel plast and it's biomatter and stuff. But otherwise, I mean, I don't know if there's I'm sure there are examples, but I can't think of them.
So for me,
look around the room.
Yeah.
For me, ginkgo leaves, like I always call them ginkgo leaves and geekoplas. And that's what they are. They're little ginkgo leaves. They're beautiful. I want to call them ginkgo leaves, but I realized in trying to kind of perfect a teach for that game that you just points. You just need to say points. No matter how many times I said ginkgo leaves, they were like, what? I get what? Like, what?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's definitely things where you almost have to go to what's more readily known when you're teaching or playing the game, or now you're just creating a barrier to entry. But on the flip side of that, I think it's kind of cool that if you really know a game, you can feel like, oh, I remember that. Like, I remember that it's, this really hard to pronounce or weird little thing that maybe most people wouldn't remember. So I wouldn't discount that either. Just feeling like this is, they're ginkgo leaves.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it's one of those things when you're teaching a game, you have to read the audience, right? Like when Rainer's teaching us a game, and we've all played so many games, and publishers will always do this. They're always on brand, and they say these are ginkgo leaves, not victory. They'll teach it that way. I get it. But if I'm teaching a game and I say ginkgo leaves, and I'm halfway through the description, and everyone else at the table is like, what?
Yeah.
I'm probably going to shift back down into victory points, things like it. And we've gotten off into a whole new thing where we're not even talking about the bits, right?
Right.
When there's games that are like, oh, they're not victory points, it's culture in this game, or honor, or like that. It does. If you play a lot of games, it does. All those things start to float around in your head, because sometimes honor are the victory points, but then sometimes honor is just another sort of currency in the game that you can use to get there. It gets a little confusing.
I was thinking of one where, and this is both a good and a bad example, and I feel good using it for both because it's one of our games, and that's Trismegistus. That is a game that I will forever have no problem with what every material is. But I can never remember the names of the essences. So when I teach that one, and it was actually amazing one time. This was actually at Spiel in 2019. So it's when the game was coming out, and the Dice Tower was doing they had done a thing where people could basically win or something, or sign up and play games at the convention with a member of the Dice Tower. And we were asked if we wanted to participate, and great and everything. And we had already decided on which game. The problem was that people could sign up, they did not know which game they would be playing. So I knew that it was going to be me and Suzanne, and then there would be, and I would just be teaching it, and then there would be 3 other random people that I didn't know, are they into a game like Trismegistus or not. That was the scariest teach I have ever done, because I had no idea who the audience was. But I was so amazed, because after the teach, everyone was talking about, oh yes, oh, this is salt and this is sulfur, and I'm going to spend my iron, and the game never talks about that on the components, because it's language independent. So it was just during of course, some of the symbols for the materials, you know what they are, or the colors might resemble them a little bit. But everyone around the table, they played it with the names of everything, and I was amazed, because that's a game that sometimes the theme and the thematic names that are used can become a hindrance instead when you're playing the game.
You know, I don't know if this person commented because of that, but there's someone just in the comments just now, Dr. Sign, said the first, speaking of theme, the first time I played Agricola, everything was discs, and it might have been helpful if things were all the different things, if you're, because literally everything is discs in that. So it gets a little, I mean, for a new player anyway, and I can imagine that might get a little confusing. That brings up another example. You guys get confused ever when everything's the same? I'll bring this up because Lagrania is on my mind. In that game, there's one thing, right?
Yeah.
And you use it for everything. And I've taught that game a few times, and I know there are people who are used to seeing all the different bits. They see, oh, it's just all this, like. How do and then once you play it, you kind of understand, like, oh, I see how you get to keep it straight, because it just depends on where it is that you're taking it from.
As long as you don't knock your player board.
True.
Yeah.
So hopefully your player boards for the new version, Rainer, will make that a thing of the past. Although even it wasn't too bad on the original game, because things were spread out enough. But yeah, you don't want to bump a player mat like that. What do you guys think about that? Like, do you prefer lots of different bits, or do you like one bit for all?
I mean, I'm never going to upgrade a game. I don't tend to go for like, all right, let's go get these special bits. I'm fine with pushing cubes around a game. That's totally fine with me. That's not what brings it to the experience, but I'm not going to be unhappy about having like a little sheeple and being like,
Sure.
There's a sheep coming out. Like that's going to be fantastic as well. So I don't begrudge it, but I don't think I would like be upset if I had something a little more simplistic. But I also don't think that's how everybody feels, right? Like a lot of people want really immersive all the way through, have those miniatures, have those really realistic little shapes to use in a game. So it depends on what pulls you in. And like you said, as long as, and I think there was a comment in chat as well, as long as like your wheats or your corn and your gold, as Zen Racer said, like aren't the same color. Like now you're like, wait, which is that? What is that? Oh, darn it. Or a problem I had once with that really messed me up was Hawaii. The game has the shells, and they're marginally different in size for the different values.
Oh.
And I didn't have any of the big ones left, but I thought I did. I thought that was what I had left. And so I planned this huge last turn around the fact that it was 5 left, and I was so excited. And actually, Board Gamer Stuff, who may still be in chat, was playing with me, and she was like, "You don't have the shells for that." And I was like, "What?" Devastated. And since then, I went through my copy and marked them. Like, I was so mad. I was like, so
I
you
can
have
imagine. I can imagine that having a huge impact on someone's attitude towards things like this. Because
Yeah.
when you're in your last turn of any game and you've planned out something big and things go wrong,
I am sure I made them watch me too. Like, fine, I don't have the shells, but this was it.
By the way, I just want to because we're streaming this simultaneously to both Facebook and Twitch, we just got rated by Losapalooza. So thank you for all the raiders that are coming over there, and
Cool.
thank you for joining us. So we're right now talking about basically component monikers, or just fun things about components and related things in games. And actually, I want to ask a question to you two. And this was, of course, sparked by the comment that you made earlier, David. So I played yesterday on stream a game of Origins. And Shrey was always taking the turn after me, and so many times on my turn I did something that he was going to do. So he's asking this, but I want to hear your opinion. That what would a Rainer component be? A piece that you want, but someone always takes the turn before you.
Yeah, that's fair. As long as it's an apple and a banana as well. Clearly, it needs to be apples, bananas, and you steal them from the person whose turn it is. If anybody has heard Rainer's infamous, what is it, a 40-minute joke? An hour?
Well, it's not that long. I mean, it'd be longer. It properly told the way I've told it since I was 16. It's probably 7 or 8 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
It just feels like an hour. That's fair.
So it's that good.
Oh, David, did you miss it?
No, I don't want. Yeah, we don't have to encourage him.
No, I'm not going to encourage him.
No, but the first time I told
heard
it to you, Jess. Yeah,
was
that was
right
when we were
after-
playing Teotihuacan at.
Yes.
It was in the middle of that when we were playing at Gamma.
That was a couple 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as everyone is sitting there and taking their turns and stuff, when it was not my turn, I'm leaning over to Jess and just keep telling, and then it's my turn again. I do my thing, and then I keep telling it.
Also, the best way to tell a joke is with lots of interruptions.
Lots of interruptions, and also a captive audience. We couldn't leave. We're playing the game. We were like, oh God, stop.
Yeah, so to answer the question, maybe just any sort of meeple. It could do anything in the game, but if it had like a sound chip built into it that actually told the joke, that would be cool.
That'd be amazing.
That would be awesome. I'm not all for sound chips in game components, but in this case, I think I would be.
Yeah. That's the Rainer component for sure.
All right, I have a challenge for you two. This may be a little off topic, but as I was preparing for this panel, I went through my games and looked at a few things, and I was trying to remember ones where I remember hearing the name of a component and thinking, well, okay, I'll probably just call it that. But then I ended up actually calling it the thing. Do either of you know these I can't hold them close to my camera, so I'll hold them here. Does anyone know what these are? Either of you? They're from a two-player game.
I know I've seen it, but I don't remember off the top of my head what.
So these are from Nagaraja. Have you guys played Nagaraja? It's
a
great game. If you it's a really fun game. Two-player game. These are fate sticks, is what they're called. But you basically roll them like dice. As you can see, there are pips on them, and then some sides. Well, this one doesn't have it, but some sides have this mark here. But they're effectively dice, and you collect all different shapes and sizes and colors of these things and kind of toss them, like throw them, like throwing bones. But they're called fate sticks, and I just happened for whatever reason I adopted it as soon as I played it, and I'd say fate sticks. And Jess, I was the person actually at the table saying, again, jokingly, they're fate sticks. So.
Right. Absolutely. No, those are pretty cool. I have not played that yet. I want to.
It's a great game. So the opposite of that is this game, which I don't know if these have a name or not, but everyone in my family calls them coasters.
Yeah.
And this is from Skull. If you haven't played Skull, silly, dare I say, stupid little game, but always a lot of fun. Particularly if it's late at night and maybe there's some, drinking involved.
Yeah.
I think that's a requirement. Isn't that on the Skull box? Like,
yeah, I mean, they have coasters after all. So
yes, they are coasters, right? This is totally the time to play Skull. Yeah, those are some good components. Those PAX Viking actually has circle cards. So a little off topic, but I always found that interesting because that's in how people respond to that, right? They're like, okay, so how do I shuffle that? How am I going to use that? How does this come out? How do I sleeve that? Like, it's just so confusing when you change something that would usually, like even in Skull, like be a card that you're placing and taking, and now you've made it this circle shape, and what that does to the experience that people have from it.
Or another example with Vindication, that is almost impossible to shuffle those cards unless they are sleeved. And as a company that makes sleeves, that's great. I love that, because then people are like, oh, I can't shuffle these. Like, I mean, they will hook on to each other and stuff, but sleeve, they're just fine, because they look great. Little cutouts.
It is really cool. I mean, I do appreciate a cool component. There is a line at which it crosses where if it's cool and for a purpose, that's extra cool. But if it's cool for the sake of being cool, and then it starts to introduce complications, maybe not so much. The Vindication cards are borderline, but I've had mine sleeved since day one, so it's never been an issue.
Well, yeah, and at least there's a workaround there. So if it starts to be, okay, we put this cool thing in, but it actually is a detriment to the game, or it's really hard to move this, I'd agree. I'm trying to think of anything that is frustrating in a game. Can you think of any examples of that where you're like, all right, it's cute and all, but we're starting to get a little fiddly or have a problem with it?
I can't think of a specific example, but I do know that I've played games where some of the little cutouts and little edges, be it like player boards or things that fit together. I do remember playing games where things are getting caught on each other when they shouldn't be. And you're like moving something, and then like Rainer said earlier, you might be moving something and then it kind of like shifts your player board, moves things around, and it's complicated. Well, the original Lagrania, this is not exactly what you're talking about, but I do love the fact that they made those player boards the way they did, and it really showcases the cards. But at the same time, once you have a lot of farm extensions or a lot of fields, that gets a little fiddly. But it's not any component's fault other than what they're trying to do with the game.
Yeah, that's fair. I've heard the complaint about, I think it's Dice Forge, right? Because you're trying to take the face off the die and then, change it into something else. I didn't find that fiddly. I think for me, that skirted the line where it was cool enough to still be cool, even though I had to take this action. But I have heard people say that for that they felt like they were just constantly shifting dice. I guess I enjoyed that, but I suppose there's a line there too.
I have an example.
Did you think of one?
I did think of one. And this could be put into the general category of when people do board components. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say this in front of Rainer. When people do board components that are cool and say, I don't know, 3-dimensional, but can sometimes potentially get in the way of seeing things. And the example I was actually going to bring up wasn't a board and dice game, but I will mention that one too. I was going to mention Praga. They made these great sort of tiered stands for a couple of the tracks that you kind of snake up and down, but you can, when you move up, you actually move up to the next level, which is the sort of theme or concept of it. You can play just on the board itself. And if you build the stands that sort of sit there, they kind of obscure a good portion of the scoring track around the outside. So a lot of people, I'm always one though that wants to use them no matter what. I don't care, even if people have to move them. I like having all the things. And then it made me think of Tekenyu, the obelisk in Tekenyu, which ironically, I am one that always uses it. In fact, Rainer knows this. I blinged mine out because the prototype he'd sent at one point to us had a particularly cool obelisk. So I actually tracked it. Well, I didn't track it down. I think Rainer told me where to get it. So I bought one from Amazon. And I will always use that. But I have played with other players who are like, do we have to have the obelisk out there? Because I just want to see the dice. I don't mind though. Like it's as hard as going like this. Okay. Or asking someone what dice are over there.
Right. I mean, but that it's going to depend, I guess, on the player for things like that. And Meeple Pete says on Dice Forge, you can easily use the side of the other face, the one that you're replacing, the new one to get the old one off, and then push it back on. So there's always ways around it. But yeah, for some people, it just may not be a preference for them. And Shrey brought up one that I was kind of thinking of too, Agra, with its really huge stand. It's gorgeous, amazing table presence. I totally see what they're thinking, because when you see that at a convention or you see people having that on the table, you're like, what is that? Wow, what is that huge stand? But it is not easy to see or place or move those little pieces up when you're, giving your benefit to the god up there. Like it's a little tricky.
Yeah,
I'm looking at all these. People have some great examples in the comments.
They do.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, Tekeno, and it's a fair comment, right? Because that was one of the things that, because it serves a functional purpose. It's easier to rotate that instead of trying to potentially reach a dice, right? The more you can move your hands away from the dice so that you don't accidentally knock them, or with the sleeve on your shirt or whatever. And that was one of those things that we tested it out and we were playing with it. And I don't know if it's just like, if you sit at if you have a square table or you position yourself so that you doesn't block at all. And yes, if you sit right in front of it, well, then now it blocks completely the other side. So it's also one of those things, right? It depends on what your table configuration is like. And I know that there are some people that have said, no, I don't like it at all, for that reason, or they wish it was smaller or whatever. And it is one of those things that, I mean, in some games, yes, it becomes a bit of a hindrance, but then in other games, it's actually cool when they do that, because then it can also enhance the gameplay.
Well, as long as you can play without it, right? I mean, people can take it off and play, and just like Praga, I can't remember Agra. Can you play without that in Agra? Do they have it on a flat board, or is it kind of? No. It has to be that, right? Yeah, that's a little different. But if you can play without it, that should be fine. Just give people the option, because I actually like it. I really think it's cool to twist that. Unless, of course, it's one of those examples where, like Jess's example earlier, if you're planning your turn and you literally didn't see a die that you could have used for a massive thing, that might be a little upsetting.
Yep. Yeah. Marked up every single shell in that game. That was 5.
I have a question for you as well, because I wrote this down as I was thinking about these things. So personally, I love the term meeple. I think that's a fantastic term for a board game component. But I am not a fan of the variants of it, like keyples and animeeples and sheeples and everything. Partly because some of them work, but other ones don't. Like, okay, sheeple, fine, that works. But what do you call a pig then, or a horse? Like they get weird,
right?
Sure. And I just I'm not a fan of that at all. Like I meeple is fine, and I will call them a pig meeple or a horse meeple or something. Like, I'll use that, but I'm not a fan of referring to them as animeeples or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a huge opinion on that. I'm trying to think what I would call them. I think if I were playing a game that had little pig meeples or little cow meeples, I usually just call them cows or pigs. Like, I don't say, may I have a pig meeple, please? But yeah, someone also, speaking of pigs and cows and sheep, someone made a great comment here about color blindness, and having different shapes like that could be a really nice way of helping that, because like Jess said earlier, she's fine with games that just have a bunch of cubes, I am too. But if you have a lot of cubes and a lot of different colors, some of those colors can get a little dicey at times.
Yeah, or even the discs that were mentioned earlier. If those are all just, if you're only basing people's ability to tell their resources apart or components apart, then on color, then you are really limiting that for folks who have color blindness or other issues with picking that up. So yeah, that is unfortunate. And that I could see where it would shine to have them actually look like what the resource is. Yeah. And to your point, Rainer, I don't like it either. I don't really like everything having these different names. Somebody suggested that, Shrey suggested that horse meeple could be a keyple. So if you're having fun with it, if you just want to joke around and be like, hey, I'm going to call this a shipple because it's a ship and it's a whatever. If you want to have fun with it, make it a joke, that's fine. And I feel like I'm always the one making panels like this serious, but I hate that people could have a disability that they couldn't approach it with. And I'd also hate, even just with the name of components, that we might be gatekeeping in a way and making it sound like there's too much to remember. And you're calling these things all these different things, and I'm not really ever going to remember all that. And when we were first talking about this as a panel, my first thought was like, that's why there's player aids. I don't remember all of this ever. Like, I'm playing tons of games and teach games and stream games, and no way am I remembering what these are. That should never be a point that makes somebody uncomfortable in playing a game or feel like, well, I don't know that that's, what that is. So I should just...
100% agree. If, like you said, it all just comes out. If everyone's being silly, and I mean, I think that's how I've generally approached this. I've never heard anyone at a table say, "Wait a minute, this is what they're called. Everyone call it that, or we're not playing this game." In fact, if I'm teaching a game and someone seems confused, like we were saying earlier about the ginkgo leaves, I mean, I'll just say, if you want, you can call them blue people, blue dudes, whatever. I'll give, I'll just say the blue thing and I'll give it to you. No big deal. Yeah. Try to make it as easy as possible. Hopefully I'm not playing with casual gamers, a game that has like a billion different resources, because it's probably not going to be their speed of game. But sometimes that could come into play.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And even like I was saying earlier with a game like Sidereal Confluence, and again, it's not a complaint against the game because I love that game. But every time that I teach it, I tell people up front, because they're listed on your player aid and whatever. I tell them, look, don't worry about them. They're listed on there. Oh, this one is food. We're never going to use those terms ever, because you will be saying I want the 2 white or whatever, and that's one thing that is interesting though about when it comes to color blindness, because sometimes you have components, like take a game like Snowdonia, for example, where they have to be cubes because you stick them in a bag and they have to have the same shape, and you pull random things out, right? That's one of those things that I know that as a publisher, we look at that a lot, right? We look and we try to. Part of it is we have members of our team that have some form of color blindness. Also, other people that we work with, and it's just become a routine thing that we do. We think about colors and so forth. And that doesn't mean that it will be perfect. Like in a game like Dark Ages, for example, if you play with 8 people, where you have 8 player colors plus you have 5 other colors that are used by the game, there will be times when there will be some colors that you can't tell apart. But otherwise, I mean, I feel like these things, those are the things that are the real, like, I think in general what we're talking about here, this is for fun, things that we find silly or whatever. But the things that are actually a hurdle for people gaming are completely different. Like, I don't care. Like the first time I played Underwater Cities, like we talked about earlier, I didn't care that they were surprising names. Like kelp, okay, yes, I get that. But steel plast, it wasn't a problem. It's give me a gray.
Yeah.
Now, I will make one. I know we've gotten serious. I will make one exception. There's one time where I would demand everyone use the correct name, and that's if there is ever a Rainer Meeple in any of the games. everyone must call it Rainer,
Yeah.
or points will be lost.
That's fair.
Rainer, by the way, this needs to happen now
I
in one
know.
of your games. Like, if it doesn't happen,
We
Jess
can at
and I are
least
gonna
make
be
a print.
disappointed.
Yeah, we're gonna have to
Can make
make
a
this
print and
happen.
play. Can make a
Yeah.
print and play for April Fools next year.
There we go.
Yep.
I like the idea.
Create some music to go with it, and they'll have you saying.
Or it should be one of those. This would be good for an on game where it's like, you know, some of the ones that are really annoying and I don't mean annoying bad, but I find them frustrating sometimes. There's something where you have to do a repetitive thing and then, you messed up, you have to start over. Here it should be, you mess up, the game will tell you a joke before you can start over.
No.
And then...
That's too much of a penalty. That's too much
I know,
of a penalty.
I think that might be a high penalty for that. You were already frustrated, and now you have to listen to this joke. Yeah. Which I will say, somebody dropped it in chat too. If you want to hear the joke, you can watch the April Fool segment on Heavy Cardboard that would have been 2019, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that April Fool segment has the joke in its entirety.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna have to check it out.
This was a long con as well, and we talk about that at the end of the video. It was something at PAX Unplugged in 2018.
Yeah,
is when we started talking about it and decided that it would happen for April Fools.
Yeah.
And then on that shelf behind Jess,
right up here,
there were various fruits placed since December. It was always an apple or a banana.
And people kept asking, but we had a crochet apple for Davis over here even. And people kept asking, why? What's the apple? And then even Edward would be like, I'm hungry. I think I'm just going to grab a snack. And he'd have a banana or an apple during the show for months, just as the lead up to April. It was good.
Yeah.
So I have a positive question for both of you. Since we're talking about components in general, this isn't a little off topic, but do you guys have a maybe, if not favorite, one of your favorite components in a game? This is like if someone used oversized cards or unique shape of something that really made something work well, or really cool dice or anything like that.
You go first.
No,
Jess.
I think this is on you. I can't think of one.
I'm asking the question obviously because I have an answer.
Yeah.
So I'll answer as you guys come up with your
Yep.
answers. So don't listen to me. Just come up with your answers.
Okay.
The dice in Seasons. Have you guys played
Oh
Seasons?
gosh, yes, they're so good.
That was an early game for me. Gosh, when was that? 2014 or something like that. It was a while back, and I remember it was a game that I was introduced to at Gen Con. I took my two boys here to Gen Con, and we sat down and we learned that. And I remember being taught sort of using the tutorial hands and everything. And I remember, first of all, the game is an amazing table presence. It's so colorful and beautiful. But those dice, I had honestly never held such good chunky dice in my hand, and it just feels good to roll those on the table. Plus the iconography in that game is really cool, and the dice are so custom and cool looking. I think those will forever be some of my favorite components in a game for sure. It might be a nostalgic thing for me, but I really like those dice.
No, they're good. And they're so for the level of game that it is, right? Yeah. It's a component that you normally would find in some expensive Kickstarter or whatever where it was blinged out. But here you have a game that is very approachable, and it has an amazing component in it. So that's a good example for sure.
I love Seasons so much. I can totally see that as being something amazing. I can think of some unique ones like Pyramid Arcade. I wanted to play that the second I saw it on the table because the pyramids are just fantastic, and that drew me in because, I think sometimes we kind of get overloaded with all these special components aren't what make a game great. You can take a deck of cards and play an infinite number of games, and that's kind of the premise of Pyramid Arcade, that there's thousands of games to play with these pyramids. And that's it. That's what it's based on. And you just change how you do that for each game. And so those I think are really, really cool. I mean, I'd love to have, I did actually line them up in a window, I think at one point, because they're iridescent that you can see through them, and they'd make rainbows on my wall. Like,
Oh, cool.
so like, I think that's a pretty cool component as well.
Yeah.
Rainer, you have one?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I am so a good example of this is a game like Cleopatra and the Society of Architects, right? Where you
Oh,
have
yes.
amazing looking
Best.
components
Mm.
that they could have just been tiles. They could have, and in many games, they are tiles. They're just something that you put out on their places on the game board and whatever. And for a game of that weight, I know that if this just had cardboard tiles, this is not a game that my kids would request to play, because it's a game that it's a level that they can understand, but it has some fun decisions to make. But because of these pieces, you're like, oh, look, I did this, and you can look afterwards and say, look, I built something, we did something. And anytime, and this is an extremely visible example, right? But I just like games where, as you're playing the game, even in Teotihuacan, for example, the fact that you have the wooden tiles, they make something when you're playing the game. They mean something. They're not just there to look cool, but they're functional. And this could be any game that enhances the game experience, and even a little bit. And in Teotihuacan, for example, I mean, yeah, they make a pyramid that is actually visibly a pyramid at the end of the game. They're not just tiles that you're stacking. Things like that I really appreciate those.
Yeah, when it connects to the game, it's cool. I mean, and as you were mentioning those tiles, it made me think of another one. And these aren't really necessary to the mechanics of the game, but we talked about this in the last few days when we were talking about mandala stones and Azul. The sheer feel of those, it's that sort of almost, that poker chip effect, where the click and the clack of those nice types of tiles as you're moving them around the board, it just, to me, elevates the experience. I know that's so superficial, but it just does. Like, and obviously the game has to be good at the end of the day, but those little touches are the kind of things that really just make it a fun experience. It's along the lines, it's different, but just earlier when you made the ba sound with the sheet,
yes,
someone at the table, someone does that at the table, at least that person's going to have that much more fun playing whatever game that was. And if there's any little thing that you can do to sort of add that experience for some people, I say, do it, as long as it doesn't cost everything you have.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are definitely things like that are they add something to the experience, and sometimes it might seem small and silly. Like we talked earlier about Agricola, for example, and the first editions, they were just cubes and discs and stuff. Right now, they come with the shaped pieces. Means that it's more approachable to play anyway, because you don't have to remember things. But also just looks nicer. It enhances the table presence and makes you feel good about something that you spent sometimes not a small amount of money on. That actually looks nice as well. It's not just cubes and cards and
right. I mean, and Meeple P brings up too, like Cooper Island makes it a fun experience because at the end you've connected all this, you've created your island, and I think that speaks to it as well. When you get to the end of a game that not only did you invest money in, but you just invested a bunch of time to play through this game, and you look at it and you've built something. You see this thing that you've created, and there's a sense of table presence of it grows throughout the game until you see it. And mandala stones, like similar, right? Like it's just beautiful on and what you're moving around. So, and then you're not only taking away from that main board, but you're creating that mandala stone, ultimately throughout the gameplay. So there's a lot to be said for that as well, to feel like you can see what you did.
Now, see, Rainer, how awesome are Jess and I for bringing all this conversation back around to Mandala
Right?
Stone?
Might be a
mean,
reason we do this. I don't know.
No, but it's one. I do appreciate that, but that was one of the things too that because it looked cool at setup, right? And then
Mhm,
yes, you take stuff off, and now it looks beautiful on your player board,
mhm.
and then you score, and now it looks beautiful over there. I mean, I like how that stays it stays with you throughout the game, even though you're depleting things on, but wherever your focus is at, you have those colors.
Well, you're so engaged with that main board when you play Mandala Stones because you're constantly like a hawk
Oh yeah.
looking at the opportunities at that board, crossing your fingers. I mean, if you play 4-player Mandala Stones, good luck thinking about your turn until
Mm-mm.
it's like the person before you. But you are looking at those things and sitting there quietly to yourself saying, don't take that. Don't take, and
Yep.
then they take it. Then, of course, Rainer, right before you, does
Every
exactly
time.
what you wanted to do.
Every time.
And
I mean,
sometimes
mind
on
you,
purpose.
of course, sometimes.
Always
Always
on purpose there.
Mind you, I sit, to the left of Edward here, so I constantly complain about that because I'm like, really, right before me, like. But
That's
again,
a giant mistake, Jess. What are you doing sitting to the
Constantly.
left of the Ed?
I know we have to switch this up. And at game days back in the day when those existed, and hopefully again, same thing. I would make him. I was like, nope, no, I'm over here. You go on that side. We're gonna play differently. Because when you're of the same mind for a gameplay, then that definitely is a reality of like, that's what I was doing. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of love for Mandala Stones in the
I
comments,
see
Rainer.
it. Yeah. So
By the way,
true.
when is that going to be widely available again? And I'm
Yeah.
not just asking to give you the opportunity to tell everyone. I've had people in my life ask me.
It's a real question.
It is.
Now?
Is it available right
Now?
now? Okay.
I mean, originally this was meant to be
Like an origin.
back when there were not container issues, right?
Oh.
So this was originally going to be something where we had expected to send out reviewer copies in like January, and then be able to start fulfilling pre-orders in February, and it was going to be out and released in March, and then we just couldn't get. So now all of that is happening basically now. So we have started fulfilling some things in Europe, so some of the review copies have gone out there, and it's basically right now, like literally right now, that it's being sent out to stores and pre-orders and review copies and such, except for a handful of them that we got early shipped from the factory. It was fun, by the way. Speaking of of Mandala Stones, so when I got a factory sample, because there's the printed patterns on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially part of that is with the times of right now, where I think there will be an increase in use of hand sanitizer and such at conventions or in general. Right when I got the factory sample, I had my kids, I gave them each a set of 2. Some of them sat and just rubbed them together to check the wear on them. Others sat and rubbed them with hand sanitizer and stuff. So they did that for 20 minutes. And
was this a
just to check
punishment, or just to be clear? I'm trying to
No,
understand.
and here's the thing: they loved it because the goal was, I want to see if you can manage to rub off the print on them.
Okay.
Oh, so they were
Over
into
time. Yeah.
Yep, they were into this. They sat and they were competing, and you've already
Were
rubbed
they
some,
successful? We don't know the end results. Did they rub it off? What
So-
happened?
So
I hope the story doesn't end with it rubs off very
I know,
easily.
like we're gonna find out.
Everyone go out and buy it right now.
This was far more punishment to the pieces than they will ever see.
No, yeah, it does not sound like how you would normally play Mandala Stones.
And basically, so this is an example of these were rubbed together.
Okay.
For 20 minutes. So
together, yeah, that's not bad.
good.
You're good. You're good.
So it's, but they had fun. They really enjoyed that part, right, of being
like
able
that.
to sit and destroy. Speaking of,
Sit and
also,
destroy.
I
Good
enjoy
game.
legacy games.
Do you?
I get to tear things up.
I hate it. I hate
Oh,
every bit of it.
I like that
don't
part.
want to tear them up. I don't like it. No,
Yeah,
you can't rip
I'm
components.
kind of in the middle. There is a bit of an excitement when you finally make the decision to, but I'm like with you, Jess. When I'm sitting there with the card, I go, oh,
Yeah, there's just a little bit of pain. I'll do it, but there's a little bit of pain. Meeple Pete mentioned, did I hear a container? I don't know if he was talking about the large bang that was on my table in that game that slid over.
That's what I thought he was talking about.
Yeah, it's probably what he was talking about. It wasn't container, though. Great components there too. I mean, huge ships. Those are weapons in themselves. But it was Cleopatra, because I just wanted people to see what Rainer was talking about, because this one's insanely amazing, and you can kind of see them there. But there's little sphinxes in this game,
and this is even the original version.
Is this the original? Yeah, this is Days of Wonder back in the day. So hard to see, but there's like sphinxes and rocks and pillars, and you're just building this thing. And again, by the end of the game, you've built this entire temple, and it's awesome. And I had to have it immediately. And the gameplay is good. I like the game, but that wasn't why I got it immediately. I wanted it because these components were just compelling. So.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I see that people disagree with me about tearing up cards.
Yeah.
Hey, I am a vicious person. I throw out inserts.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're a monster. You're a little bit of a monster.
You throw out inserts.
Inserts. He does, like in front of you. He'll be like, new game. Look at these.
You know, I've gotten better. It wasn't long ago that I actually threw out a bunch of expansion boxes. I don't know why I kept them. There was nothing in them. I just had empty expansion boxes in a closet or in my attic. And I was like, you know what? I started sort of adopting that whole, like, you know, does this spark joy in my life thing?
Yes.
And if it's been sitting around for 5 years and I haven't touched it,
yeah.
Well, if it's a game, it's a little different. If
Fair.
it's been sitting around, I will play it.
Yeah.
And if my play experience is like, oh man, I forgot how good this was, it stays.
Yep.
But if not, I can get rid of it. But if it's an empty box, all that sort of junk, nah. I'm fine.
I kept it. I did the same as you. I had them for years, all stacked up. I was going to use them for prototypes or something, and ultimately, finally, there was my poor trash people. I was like, okay, and here's 500 like expansion boxes. You take care of this.
Sometimes I keep them for practical reasons, like, and part of that is, as a publisher, sometimes I have to put together a prototype.
Sure.
So I need a spare box, and I put other stuff over it, right? But otherwise, yeah, I don't. Like, sometimes I'll use a small expansion box to help hold components in another game, which also gives me evil looks at a table sometimes when it's like, oh, we're playing this game. Here's an expansion box from another game that I'm using to just hold bits in place in there or whatever. But it's, yeah.
We got to do what we got to do.
Can't all be nice people like you guys.
Rainer, you are the nicest evil person I've ever met.
Fair. That's fair.
And you take that as a however you want it.
Well, thank you.
But I'm going to put that out there.
I think my kids would agree with you. It depends on the day.
Yeah, I think you're just training them for, like, you're going to transition over. Okay, now, kids, the competition is who can scrub off the most dirt and food from the plates from dinner.
This is a genius idea. I love it.
That works. I'm guessing your kids are smarter than that.
I have a feeling.
But when it comes to gaming and stuff, it's in our family. So I have 5 kids, and we play a lot of games, and we there's never, like I don't try to crush them, obviously, but I'm not going to hold back either. If we're playing, then you're on your own.
Mhm.
Like if it's your first time or you feel stuck, yeah, I might, which I would do with anyone. I would say, well, you might want to do this, or I'm teaching a game or whatever. Sure, which is how David wins games sometimes.
It is. It is. I win because of Rainer's advice. And you know what, Rainer? I'm gonna because we talked about that yesterday. I want to say this too, just because people don't think I'm an awful gamer, although I am. When I teach games, I do the same exact thing. I will help people as long as they want help. I don't like, I'm very respectful of people who say, I can do this on my own. But I'm also always willing to say, if you have any, here's some things you could do. And then inevitably they win. And then I find myself asking myself at the end, like, why don't I just do what I'm telling the other people to do? Because I keep losing. I can't stand teaching someone a game and then they destroy me. My wife does it all the time. I'm like, maybe I should stop just giving advice because I want to win sometimes.
It's completely #good teacher. That means you're a great teacher. And take the win with that. Because I taught my 13-year-old how to play PAX Premier 2nd Edition, which, I mean, I'd played PAX Premier 1st Edition too, but it took me at least 4 plays of PAX Premier in general to even understand what I was doing in that game. And I taught it to her, and she then annihilated me in a score I hadn't even seen that high before. So I was like, I guess I'll take that I'm a good teacher because you just learned this and killed me.
I'll embrace that, I suppose.
There you go.
But Rainer, you are, to bring it back to what you were talking about. Rainer's a great teacher, and he'll often my wins on the demos of your games when I've been playing with like Ryan and Kira and Jeremy, and you're just teaching. My wins are your wins, sir, because I do that, and just so you know, you're not the only one. I think I might just have something about me when I like pause on my turn. Whoever's demoing the game goes, well, you could do this. And I'm like, okay. And then everyone else who I know that's playing against me is like, oh, is David going to play for himself or what?
Yeah. Stop helping him.
I don't mind.
Yeah, because see, my experience is completely different. Rainer never helps me. There's no help. He's just like, take your turn.
There's something I exude some sort of helplessness that everyone just gravitates towards with help. So,
I'm gonna have to try that. I'll change my look. I'll try to.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know. It's not, and of course it's well with Jess. I can say that I know that you're good at games, right? And but I'm also I need to be careful because I'm not saying that you're bad at games, David. But a good example,
I kind of feel you are. I mean, I appreciate that you caveated that, but it was kind of an afterthought, sir.
Well, I was gonna say when we played Tawantinsuyu, because this is a good example of where you won.
It was
because of a strategy, but it was one that it required. Okay, well, if you want to pull that off, because you said at the beginning, okay, well, I think I want to try this.
Yeah.
And then you were going to several times you're going to deviate from that. You were going to do something else because it seemed cool.
Oh,
and it's like no.
Cool, because I chase every squirrel in every game. So if I can't stay focused on the one thing that I'm supposed to do, I'm like, oh, what I did there was fun. I'm going to do more of that for a little while. And then it never works out. But
yes, there was a game where at the end, I mean,
I agree. It was the tapestries that did it for me there. I had insane tapestry points in that game. Now, my problem with a game like that, or any game, is once I do something like that, I will never not do the tapestry strategy ever again. I am now forever, even though I say I'll play a new game of it. I'm going to try something new this time. Nope. Go down that tapestry path. It also depends on what buildings come out. If I get those buildings that are like, oh, you sure you don't want to do tapestries? Because these buildings really help you with the tapestries.
Right.
And then, of course, I'm just right down the tapestry path.
Yep. All right. Well, this has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. And we went a little bit all over the place, but that
We
was
did.
also the point of this. This was the point, was to start somewhere, and then we would find our ways through different gaming conversations, right? Also, really cool comments in the chat, and
Yeah, a lot of
even
comments.
those that disagree with us, we still appreciate those. Because no, and this is, I think this is why we do this, right? This is why we're in this hobby, because we love games, and it doesn't matter if we are on the publishing end or reviewing end or content creation or just playing games, right? We do this because we love the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
and it's great to see you guys. I mean, no
Yeah.
cons for a year. This is I missed this, so it was
It
nice
is
to
fun.
take the time to chat.
You guys have done a great job this weekend with this, and it is, like, have to
well,
say
thank you.
exactly what Jess did. It has been fun just to see virtually, at least, some of the people that we only ever see at cons. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I agree. It's been, and especially because even if I haven't been actively taking part of it, I've been sitting here and running the streams in the background, and it's been so much fun. This has been amazing for me, just from that perspective of see all the content and all the great, and in fact, both of you did interviews that were amazing. So thank you,
That
and
was fun.
well done.
I mean,
That was
that's always a pleasure, and I never thought, a couple years ago I met Stefan Feld at Gen Con and had lunch with him. Never thought that would happen in a million years. Interviewed Oda last night. I mean, come on, this is super cool.
Oh, it is
That was
so nice too. He's such a sweetheart, and Stefan Feld is so tall.
Oh my
Holy
God.
cow!
He is a towering person, but yeah, it's that'll never get old doing this. And we meet people all the time at cons, but it is still such a pleasure, and I definitely fanboy out when I'm meeting like a designer like that. Hearing Oda last night talk about like, oh yeah, my friends this and that, and it's just like this whole sort of like clique of all these Euro designers. I'm like, oh my gosh. You're like, having lunch with Uva and this and that. I'm like, oh, okay,
because
well,
of course
fine.
you would. Why wouldn't you? I interviewed Adam today, Adam Kowinski, and just totally fangirled. I'm like, Nemesis. It was. I think I held it in check enough, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing to do what we do. So thanks for having us do that.
Yes.
All right. Well, we are gonna take a brief break here. Thank you again so much to both of you for joining. Please stay with us. We're gonna just take a brief break, and we'll be back with Stella from Meeple University, and we're gonna talk about
Stella.
gonna talk about convention things, and she has different challenges than we do when it comes to conventions, because she has to travel from Australia and take her equipment and everything with her. So that will be a fun a fun conversation. Thank you again to both of you. This was awesome. And yes, stay with.
Thanks, Rainer. Bye-bye.